Ladies and gentlemen, silence. It's a word that can be unsettling, uncomfortable, and even challenging. Many of us grew up believing that speaking up was synonymous with strength, and that silence was a form of weakness or submission. But today I want to offer a different perspective, one that flips this belief upside down and invites us to think of silence not as a lack of voice, but as a source of deep, transformative power. To begin, let's address what silence is not. Silence is not passivity. Silence is not avoidance. Silence does not mean we don't have a voice or that we are not capable of speaking up when necessary. Instead, silence is a deliberate choice, a conscious decision to step back, observe, and reflect before we respond or act. Choosing silence requires courage. It takes a profound kind of bravery to hold back our immediate reactions, our impulsive thoughts, and our burning desire to be heard. When we choose silence, we are saying to ourselves and to the world that we trust the process of understanding over the rush to be understood. It is the practice of holding space, of creating room for deeper insights and allowing those insights to guide our next move. In a world that constantly demands us to prove ourselves, to justify our existence, and to shout above the noise, choosing silence is an act of rebellion. It's about reclaiming our power by recognizing that our worth is not tied to how loudly or frequently we speak, but to the depth and authenticity of what we feel. Let's talk about the relationship between silence and self-awareness. Silence is like a mirror. When we allow ourselves to be silent, we are confronted with our own thoughts, emotions, and beliefs. It's an opportunity to meet ourselves where we are without judgment, without expectation, and without the need to mask our true feelings. The truth is, we often avoid silence because it forces us to face our own vulnerabilities. It requires us to sit with our discomfort, our fears, and our insecurities. But it's precisely in those moments of quiet introspection that we discover who we really are. Silence allows us to tune into our inner world and understand the motivations, desires, and wounds that drive our behavior. The power of silence lies in its ability to create space for clarity. When we're constantly bombarded by noise, external, internal, we lose sight of our own needs and desires. We start living according to other people's expectations, opinions, and judgments. Silence, on the other hand, acts as a reset button, giving us a chance to realign with our authentic selves and to hear the faint whispers of our intuition. We live in a culture that glorifies busyness. We're taught that productivity is the ultimate measure of success, and that slowing down is synonymous with falling behind. This is why silence can feel so threatening. It goes against everything we've been conditioned to believe. When we're silent, we're not producing, we're not contributing, we're not performing. And that can be terrifying because it challenges the very core of our self-worth. But here's the paradox in silence. We find the freedom to let go of our need to be productive, to be constantly in motion, to be always achieving. In silence, we reclaim our humanity. Silence strips away the masks we wear and exposes our true selves. It reveals the raw, unpolished version of who we are, the parts we'd rather hide, the vulnerabilities we're afraid to show, the doubts we've been carrying for years. But it's only when we allow ourselves to sit in that discomfort that we can begin to heal, to grow, and to become more fully ourselves. Silence isn't just about the absence of words, it's about the presence of deep, attentive listening. Listening is one of the most profound forms of silence because it requires us to quiet our own minds, set aside our own agendas, and truly be present with another person's experience. It's about creating space for someone else to be seen and heard without interruption, without judgment, and without the need to fix or change anything. When we listen in silence, we practice empathy. We step into someone else's world and allow ourselves to be affected by their story. This kind of listening is rare because it demands that we let go of our desire to be right, to have all the answers, and to control the narrative. It requires us to be humble and open, to admit that we don't have all the answers, and to recognize that every person we encounter has something valuable to teach us. Listening in silence is about honoring the humanity of the other. It's about acknowledging that their experience is valid, even if it's different from our own. It's about saying, I am here, I am present, and I am willing to listen, even if I don't fully understand. This kind of listening builds trust, deepens connection, and allows for genuine understanding to flourish. We live in a world that values speed, efficiency, and instant gratification. We're constantly bombarded by information, news, opinions, and noise. The idea of slowing down, of being still, can feel counterintuitive and even impossible. But it's precisely because of the chaos that stillness is so essential. Stillness is not the same as doing nothing. It's a conscious choice to pause, to breathe, and to create space for what truly matters. Stillness is about finding moments of quiet amidst the noise and allowing ourselves to be fully present in those moments. It's about reconnecting with our own thoughts, feelings, and sensations without distraction. Stillness allows us to cultivate mindfulness, the practice of being fully aware of our present experience without judgment. When we practice mindfulness, we learn to observe our thoughts and emotions without getting caught up in them. We develop the ability to respond to life's challenges with greater clarity, wisdom, and compassion, rather than reacting impulsively out of fear or anger. Silence teaches us the art of responding instead of reacting. When we react, we are driven by our impulses, our emotions, and our conditioning. Reactions are often automatic, unconscious, and rooted in fear or defensiveness. They are the knee-jerk responses that we regret later, the words we wish we could take back, the actions that don't align with our values. Responding, on the other hand, requires us to pause. It requires us to sit in silence, to take a step back, and to reflect before we speak or act. Responding is a choice. It's about being intentional with our words and actions, about making decisions that are grounded in our core values rather than our immediate emotional state. In silence, we learn to create a gap between stimulus and response. This gap is where our power lies. It's in this space of silence that we can choose how to respond to the challenges, conflicts, and difficulties that life throws our way. We can choose to respond with patience, with kindness, with courage, and with integrity. There's a misconception that silence is a sign of weakness or a lack of confidence. But the truth is, silence requires an immense amount of inner strength. It takes strength to hold back our opinions, to refrain from defending ourselves, to resist the urge to fill the silence with empty words. It takes strength to allow our emotions to surface without pushing them away or numbing them with distractions. Silence is a practice of surrender. It's about letting go of our need to control the outcome, to have all the answers, and to always be right. In silence, we learn to trust the process, to have faith that the answers will come in their own time, and to be at peace with the uncertainty of not knowing. When we cultivate silence, we build resilience. We develop the ability to stay grounded in the face of adversity, to remain calm in the midst of chaos, and to find our center when everything around us feels like it's falling apart. Silence teaches us to tap into our inner resources, to rely on our own wisdom, and to find strength in our own presence. Silence is the birthplace of creativity. It's in the quiet moments, the pauses between the noise, that our minds have the freedom to wander, to dream, and to imagine new possibilities. Creativity doesn't thrive in a state of constant busyness or distraction. It needs space to breathe, to expand, and to grow. When we allow ourselves to be silent, we give ourselves permission to be curious, to explore our ideas without judgment, and to play with possibilities that we might not have considered otherwise. Silence is a form of nourishment for the creative soul. It's where our best ideas are born, where our deepest insights emerge, and where our most authentic expressions come to life. Creativity is not just about art or innovation, it's about the way we choose to live our lives. It's about finding new ways of being, of relating, and of making meaning in the world. Silence invites us to be creative with our choices, to find solutions that are unique to us, and to live in alignment with our values and desires. In a world that constantly demands our attention, silence is a radical act of self-care. It's about creating boundaries, saying no to the noise, and giving ourselves permission to rest, recharge, and reconnect with what truly matters. Silence is a way of reclaiming our time, our energy, and our focus. When we practice silence, we prioritize our well-being over our productivity. We recognize that our worth is not determined by how much we do, but by who we are. Silence allows us to slow down, to listen to our bodies, and to honor our own needs without guilt or shame. It's about giving ourselves the space to breathe, to rest, and to simply be. Self-care is not selfish, it's essential. When we take care of ourselves, we show up more fully for the people and the causes that matter to us. Silence is a way of filling our own cup so that we have something to give to others. It's about nurturing our own soul so that we can be a source of light and strength for those around us. Gratitude is one of the most transformative practices we can cultivate, and silence plays a key role in nurturing a grateful heart. When we are silent, we have the opportunity to notice the small moments of beauty, joy, and wonder that often go unnoticed in the rush of everyday life. Silence allows us to be present with the gifts that surround us, the warmth of the sun on our skin, the sound of a loved one's laughter, the taste of a delicious meal. Gratitude is about paying attention to the present moment, and silence helps us to do just that. It shifts our focus from what we lack to what we have, from what's missing to what's already here. In silence, we find contentment in the simple things, and we recognize that happiness is not something we chase, but something we cultivate from within. When we practice gratitude in silence, we open our hearts to the abundance that already exists in our lives. We realize that we don't need more, we don't need to be more, and we don't need to be more, and we don't need to prove ourselves to anyone. We are enough, just as we are. And that realization is the foundation of true contentment. One of the hardest lessons we learn in life is the power of letting go of expectations, of control, of the need to be right. Silence teaches us how to release what no longer serves us and to make room for what truly matters. It's about surrendering to the flow of life and trusting that things will unfold as they are meant to. Letting go doesn't mean giving up or resigning ourselves to fate. It means accepting that there are things we cannot change and focusing our energy on what we can. In silence, we learn to release our attachment to outcomes and to find peace in the present moment. We learn to let go of the stories we tell ourselves about who we should be and to embrace who we truly are. The practice of letting go is not easy. It requires us to face our fears, to confront our limiting beliefs, and to challenge the patterns that have kept us stuck. But in silence, we find the strength to do just that. We find the courage to release the past, to forgive ourselves and others, and to move forward with an open heart. Ultimately, silence is not just a practice, it's a way of being. It's about living from a place of presence, authenticity, and inner peace. It's about finding our center amidst the chaos, staying true to our values, and honoring our own truth. Silence is about being grounded in who we are, regardless of what the world around us says. When we embrace silence as a way of being, we become more attuned to the rhythm of our own lives. We learn to listen to the wisdom of our own bodies, to trust the guidance of our own intuition, and to follow the path that is uniquely ours. We become more compassionate, more patient, and more loving toward ourselves and others. Silence is not the absence of life, it's the presence of everything that makes life meaningful. It's where we find our deepest truths, our greatest strengths, and our most profound connections. Silence is the space in which we come home to ourselves, and in that homecoming we discover that we already have everything we need to create a life of purpose, joy, and fulfillment. Our journey to wholeness is not about becoming someone new. It's about remembering who we already are. It's about peeling away the layers of conditioning, expectations, and fear that have covered our true selves. Silence is the invitation to return to that place of authenticity, to embrace our imperfections, and to live from a place of wholeheartedness. Wholeness is not about being perfect, it's about being real. It's about showing up with all of our messiness, our doubts, and our contradictions, and still believing that we are worthy of love and belonging. Silence teaches us that we don't have to be anything other than who we are, and that our greatest gift to the world is our true, unapologetic self. As we embrace silence, we learn that the answers we've been searching for are not out there, they are within us. Our journey to wholeness is about trusting that inner wisdom, about letting go of the need for approval, and about standing in our own power. It's about becoming the author of our own story and creating a life that reflects our deepest values and desires. Silence invites us to embrace the unknown, to sit with uncertainty, and to make peace with the fact that life is unpredictable. We don't have all the answers and we never will. But in silence, we learn to be okay with that. We learn to trust that the journey is more important than the destination, and that the lessons we learn along the way are what shape us into the people we are meant to become. The unknown can be a source of fear, but it can also be a source of wonder. It's the space where possibilities exist, where creativity flourishes, and where new opportunities arise. Silence teaches us to embrace the unknown with an open heart, to let go of our need for certainty, and to find beauty in the mystery of life. When we embrace the unknown, we become more adaptable, more resilient, and more willing to take risks. We learn to navigate the challenges and uncertainties of life with a sense of curiosity and courage rather than fear and resistance. We become more willing to let go of what no longer serves us and to step into the new and unknown with a sense of trust and excitement. Patience is a virtue that is often undervalued in our fast-paced world. We want quick fixes, instant results, and immediate answers. But silence teaches us the importance of patience, of waiting, of trusting the process, and of allowing things to unfold in their own time. Patience is not about passively sitting back, it's about having the strength to persevere even when the path is unclear. In silence, we learn to be patient with ourselves, to give ourselves grace when we fall short, and to recognize that growth takes time. We learn to be patient with others, to honor their journey, and to give them the space they need to find their own way. Patience is about letting go of the need to rush, to force, and to control, and instead embracing the natural rhythm of life. When we practice patience in silence, we develop a sense of inner calm that allows us to navigate the challenges of life with greater ease. We become more resilient in the face of setbacks, more adaptable in the face of change, and more compassionate toward ourselves and others. Patience is not about waiting for life to happen. It's about being present in the unfolding of life, with all of its twists and turns. In a world that often prioritizes logic, intellect, and reason, silence allows us to tune into the wisdom of our hearts. The heart is a source of deep intuition, empathy, and connection. It's the part of us that knows what is right, even when it defies logic or reason. Silence creates the space for us to listen to that inner voice, to trust our gut feelings, and to follow the guidance of our own hearts. The wisdom of the heart is not about making decisions based on emotions alone. It's about integrating our emotions with our intellect, our intuition with our reason, and our compassion with our strength. Silence allows us to cultivate this kind of wisdom by giving us the space to reflect, to listen, and to discern what truly matters. When we live from the wisdom of the heart, we make choices that are aligned with our deepest values and desires. We prioritize relationships over achievements, connection over competition, and love over fear. Silence teaches us that true wisdom is not about having all the answers, but about living in alignment with our own truth. Relationships are one of the most important aspects of our lives, and silence plays a crucial role in fostering healthy, meaningful connections. In silence, we learn to be present with another person's experience, to listen without interrupting, and to hold space for their emotions without judgment. We learn to communicate not just with words, but with our presence, our attention, and our empathy. Silence in relationships is about creating a safe space for vulnerability. It's about allowing ourselves and others to be seen and heard without the need to fix, change, or control. It's about honoring each other's humanity and recognizing that we are all doing the best we can with the tools we have. In silence, we also learn to set boundaries, to say no when we need to honor our own needs, and to prioritize our own well-being. Boundaries are not about shutting people out. They are about creating space for healthy, respectful connections. Silence teaches us that we don't have to explain, justify, or defend our boundaries. They are enough simply because they honor who we are. Forgiveness is one of the most challenging practices we can undertake, but it's also one of the most freeing. Silence plays a key role in the practice of forgiveness because it allows us to process our pain without judgment, to release our resentment, and to make peace with the past. Forgiveness is not about condoning harmful behavior. It's about letting go of the anger and bitterness that keep us stuck. In silence, we learn to forgive ourselves for the mistakes we've made, the opportunities we've missed, and the ways we've fallen short of our own expectations. We learn to be gentle with ourselves and to recognize that we are all imperfect, that we are all doing the best we can with the tools we have. Forgiveness in silence is about finding freedom not for the other person, but for ourselves. It's about releasing the grip that the past has on our hearts and allowing ourselves to move forward with grace, compassion, and courage. It's about choosing to live from a place of love rather than fear. When we embrace silence, we transform our lives in profound and unexpected ways. We become more patient, more resilient, more compassionate, and more grounded. We learn to trust ourselves, to listen to our own wisdom, and to follow the guidance of our own hearts. We find the courage to let go of what no longer serves us, to embrace the unknown, and to live in alignment with our deepest values. Silence is not about escaping from life. It's about fully engaging with it. It's about being present with the beauty and the pain, the joy and the sorrow, the certainty and the uncertainty. It's about finding peace not in the absence of noise, but in the presence of our own truth. When we practice silence, we become more attuned to the rhythm of our own lives. We learn to move with the flow of life rather than against it. We find strength in our stillness, wisdom in our quiet moments, and joy in the simple act of being. To surrender is to release our grip on the things we can't control, to stop fighting against the current, and to allow life to flow as it's meant to. Silence is the space where we learn the art of surrender, where we let go of our need for certainty, our desire to force outcomes, and our fear of the unknown. Surrender is not about giving up, it's about giving in to the wisdom of the moment, trusting that things will unfold as they should. In silence, we become more aware of the patterns of resistance that keep us stuck, the ways we try to control, manipulate, or cling to situations out of fear. We begin to see that true freedom lies not in forcing things to go our way, but in accepting what is, even when it's uncomfortable. Silence teaches us to loosen our grip, to breathe deeply, and to trust the process of life. The art of surrender is about recognizing that we don't have to have all the answers, that it's okay not to know, and that we are enough even in the midst of uncertainty. Silence reminds us that life is not something to be conquered or mastered, it's something to be experienced. In surrender, we find peace not because we have control, but because we no longer need it. Silence is a place where vulnerability thrives. It's in the quiet moments that we confront our deepest fears, our insecurities, and our uncertainties. Vulnerability is often seen as a weakness, but in reality, it's a profound source of strength. It takes courage to sit in silence with our own emotions, to acknowledge our pain, and to be honest with ourselves about what we need and what we feel. In silence, we learn that vulnerability is not about exposing ourselves for the sake of it. It's about being real, about embracing our humanity, and about having the courage to be seen as we truly are. Silence teaches us to let down our guard, to remove the masks we wear to protect ourselves, and to show up authentically. It's about understanding that we don't have to have it all together, that our struggles are not something to be ashamed of, and that our imperfections are what make us beautifully human. Vulnerability in silence is about creating space for self-compassion. It's about speaking kindly to ourselves, forgiving ourselves for our mistakes, and acknowledging that we are doing the best we can. Silence teaches us that we are worthy of love and belonging, not because of what we do or achieve, but simply because we are. It's in our vulnerability that we find the strength to be fully alive, to connect deeply with others, and to live with an open heart. Living authentically is a courageous act, and silence is the ground on which authenticity grows. When we strip away the noise, the expectations, and the opinions of others, we are left with our own truth. Silence gives us the space to explore who we really are, beyond the roles we play and the labels we carry. It's where we confront the parts of ourselves we've hidden, suppressed, or ignored and learn to embrace them with compassion. In silence, we come face to face with our true desires, our passions, and our values. We begin to see the ways in which we've compromised ourselves for the sake of fitting in, pleasing others, or avoiding conflict. Silence teaches us that it's okay to be different, to stand out, and to choose our own path. It's about honoring our uniqueness and trusting that we are enough just as we are. The courage to be authentic comes from the willingness to be misunderstood, to face criticism, and to stand alone if necessary. Silence gives us the strength to do that because it reminds us that our worth is not dependent on external validation. In silence, we connect with our inner guidance, and we find the confidence to live a life that is true to who we are, rather than who we think we should be. Leadership is not about power, control, or authority. It's about service, humility, and compassion. Silence is an essential quality for any compassionate leader because it cultivates the kind of presence that allows us to truly listen, understand, empathize with others. Silence helps us move from reactive to responsive leadership, from leading with ego to leading with heart. In silence, we learn to be present with the people we lead, to listen deeply to their needs, and to create a space where they feel valued and heard. Silence teaches us that leadership is not about having all the answers, but about asking the right questions. It's about creating an environment where others can thrive, where they are empowered to bring their best selves to the table, and where they feel safe to share their ideas and opinions. Compassionate leadership requires vulnerability, humility, and the ability to admit when we don't know or when we've made a mistake. Silence gives us the courage to do that, to own our flaws, and to lead from a place of authenticity. It's about recognizing that we are all on this journey together, that we all have something to contribute, and that the best leaders are those who lift others up rather than push them down. Creativity thrives in the fertile ground of silence. It's in the stillness that our minds are free to wander, explore, and imagine new possibilities. Silence is where we tap into our inner world, where we connect with our deepest inspirations, and where we allow our creativity to flow without judgment or limitation. In silence, we break free from the constraints of expectation and perfectionism. We give ourselves permission to create for the sake of creating, to play with ideas, and to experiment without fear of failure. Silence is about letting go of the need for validation, recognition, or approval, and instead focusing on the joy of the creative process itself. When we embrace silence, we create a space where new ideas can take root, where inspiration can strike and where our imagination can soar. Creativity is not about producing something perfect. It's about expressing ourselves authentically, exploring new perspectives, and finding joy in the act of creation. Silence teaches us that creativity is not a destination, but a journey, one that is messy, unpredictable, and full of surprises. Mindfulness is the practice of being fully present in the moment, and silence is its foundation. In silence, we learn to pay attention to our thoughts, our emotions, and our surroundings without judgment. We become more aware of the sensations in our bodies, the rhythm of our breath, and the subtleties of our inner experience. Silence teaches us to be here now. Mindfulness in silence is about noticing the small details that often go unnoticed: the sound of the wind, the warmth of the sun, the texture of the ground beneath our feet. It's about being fully present with whatever arises without needing to change it, fix it, or escape from it. In silence, we learn to embrace the present moment exactly as it is. The practice of mindfulness is not about achieving a particular state of mind. It's about being with whatever is happening in the here and now. Silence reminds us that life is not something to be controlled or managed. It's something to be experienced. When we are mindful in silence, we develop a sense of inner calm, resilience, and clarity that allows us to navigate life's challenges with grace and ease. In a world that often pressures us to make quick decisions, silence offers a powerful antidote. It gives us the space to pause, to reflect, and to consider our choices from a place of clarity and calm. Decision-making in silence is about listening to our inner wisdom, weighing our options, and trusting our intuition. Silence helps us distinguish between the noise of external expectations and the voice of our own truth. It allows us to step back from the urgency of the moment and to consider what truly matters. In silence, we become more discerning, more intentional, and more aligned with our values. We learn to make decisions that are not just smart, but wise decisions that reflect who we are and what we stand for. When we make decisions in silence, we are less likely to be swayed by fear, doubt, or the opinions of others. We trust ourselves more, and we are more willing to take risks that are aligned with our deepest desires. Silence teaches us that we don't have to rush, that clarity comes in its own time, and that the right decision often reveals itself when we give ourselves the space to listen. Taking risks requires courage, and silence is the space where we cultivate that courage. In silence, we connect with our inner strength, our resilience, and our capacity to face uncertainty with grace. We learn that courage is not the absence of fear, but the willingness to move forward in spite of it. Silence helps us get in touch with what truly matters, so we can take risks that are aligned with our deepest values and desires. In silence, we confront our fears: the fear of failure, the fear of judgment, the fear of the unknown, and we learn to move beyond them. We see that our fears are not barriers, but invitations to grow, to expand, and to step into the fullness of who we are. Silence gives us the courage to say yes to opportunities that scare us, and no to those that don't align with our values. Taking risks in silence is about trusting ourselves, trusting the process, and trusting that even if we fail, we are still enough. It's about embracing the journey, regardless of the outcome, and recognizing that our worth is not tied to our successes or failures. In silence, we learn that the greatest risk is not in failing, but in not trying at all.